So anyway, after church, we were all sitting in the back corner there, and Brooke said, when he was talking about God poking our heart, it kind of reminded me of Terry. Now, Terry is a chiropractor, retired now, but she spent a lot of time with her evil thumbs getting into areas of people's bodies. And so the verse that Kev was talking about, if you weren't here, was Psalms 139, 32, and it's, search my heart, O God, know me. See if there's any, search my heart and know me, test me, and offensive ways or anxious thoughts, certain versions say. So Terry, come on up. Years and years, maybe 30 years of doing her practice of chiropractic. And so we have a little parallel this morning about how God searches us to find those spots. And so tell me, when you are analyzing a physical body and you find that spot, why are you so evil? Why do you have to push so hard? And what happens when you do that? So our vulnerabilities.
Well, first, when Kevin said that God pokes our heart and tests us, in my head I was like, oh, that sounds awful. And then I walk over there and they're like, that's just like you poking. I'm like, oh, great. That's my legacy. Awful. Well, part of it is I'm an introvert and I don't connect easily with people. So when I put my hands on people, that's how I connect. So that's kind of the first entrance into me finding out what's going on. And then it also lets people's bodies know that something's going to change. Something's going to happen so
you're
they're
bringing
prepared.
Awareness. So you're bringing awareness?
Absolutely. Bringing awareness, when I actually start digging in, which is not pleasant.
Not at all.
Then your body's reaction is to bring its focus there, bring its awareness, bring its energy, bring its healing to that area with blood flow. And
does the body, though, fight it a little bit when you do that?
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yes. And I stand far enough back that I'm not going to get swung at because it's painful. So, of course, your body reacts by wanting to tighten up and fight back.
I see some parallels. I see some parallels.
Yes.
All right.
And then the reason I do it is not just because I'm mean. It actually gets the body ready so that when I do an adjustment, for those of you that have ever been to a chiropractor, that it makes it easier for me to do that because it softens up the area. And it also lets it stay better because now your muscles they've stopped fighting so much and they allow what I've done to stay a little longer.
So I allow the pain, and then it eventually
softens things.
Good things come our way.
Good things, some change happens, and then hopefully that change stays because you've done a little bit of pre-work, so that so that all that torture is not for naught.
So endure the pain, and there will be some fruit from the other side.
Some fruit for sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
So thanks a lot for sharing that. Terry is very much an introvert, so we especially thank her for coming up here. There's we're in this series called Habits of a Healthy Heart, and last week, as we were closing out the talk, we asked God to search us and to test us and to see if there be any offensive way in us, and then to lead us out. Right? And in the moment, I had some pretty interesting conversations afterwards, and in that moment, it's easy to kind of focus on that. You, like many of you, I suspect, we walked out of here going, "Okay, God, I'm in. Test me. I want to be better. So poke those sore spots so I know what they are, and then I get to see how I react to that, and depending on how I reacted to that, told me how I needed to deal with that, how I was dealing with whatever was going on in me. But probably over the week, for most of us, we let that drift, and probably didn't think about it a whole lot more. There's a psychology term called cognitive dissonance. How many people know what that means? Right? Several people, right? So it's the idea that we hold two opposing views and we hold them to be true, right? And so it can come in a variety of ways, but it's the idea that I believe that I should lose weight, but I also believe that I can't go without my whatever, bonbons, I don't know, whatever it is. Right? That I know that I should do this, and so what we do is we have to rationalize that, because we can't actually function carrying two opposing views all the time. So we somehow have to rationalize that, and often how we rationalize it, or how we deal with it, is that we just kind of dumb it down and say, I don't really care, right? I don't want to think about this. And what we're going to talk about today is one of those cases. We're going to talk about something that, as North Americans, we hold pretty strong views of what I'm going to talk about to be true. As Christ followers, as people who believe that Jesus is the way, that Jesus is the answer, we hold that to be true as well. And so when we get looking at this, I'm going to warn you right up front. This will probably be one of those talks that you're going to be tempted to walk out of here going, yeah, I don't really care, right? It doesn't really matter, and that's how you're going to rationalize it. Don't do that. Let this settle in, I challenge you. Let this settle in. Last week, we talked about how the question was, so when you lie, who do you lie to the most? The answer was, you lie to yourself the most. And as we chased that question down, we went in different tracks. This morning, one of the lies we tell ourselves is this. It is that more is better. We tell ourselves that more is better. More money is better. More toys is better. More whatever you were into is better. And reality is that most of the marketing that is driven to us is that you can't live without this, whatever this is. Your life will be better, right, if you get the next streaming app. You haven't lived until you've gotten whatever the next thing is. And that lie is actually the very first recorded lie in the Bible, that more is better. When you pick up your Bible and you read in the first couple chapters, what you read about is Adam and Eve. And Adam and Eve live in this paradise. They lived in the world where there was no death. Just think about that. They lived in this world where they walked face to face with God. They lived in a world where there were no weeds. They lived in a world where it was absolute paradise. And part of that reason that was absolute paradise and perfection was partly because of what they had and partly because of what they didn't have. And so Satan comes along in this story. We pick it up in Genesis chapter 3. It says, "Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, 'Did God really say you must not eat from any of the tree in the garden, from any tree in the garden?'" All right? And Eve answers that question, no, we can eat everything except for, God said that there's the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and if we eat that, we will die. And here's where Satan shows up with a lie. Satan says, "You will not certainly die." Remember, there was no death. It wasn't that God said, if you eat of it, you're instantly going to die. It just said, if you eat it, you will die. It wasn't an instant thing. It was the fact that there was no death before this. "You will not certainly die," the serpent said to the woman, "for God knows when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God." Another lie. "Knowing good and evil." When you sit back and think about your lives right now, when you sit back and you look at your calendar or you look at what you spent time doing in the last week, when you look at the frustrations that you experienced in your life, I want you to answer this question: is the stuff you have keeping you from the life you want? Is the stuff you have keeping you from the life you want? In this series, we're talking about habits of a healthy heart. We're going to be talking, or last week we talked about the habit of self-examination. This week we're talking about the habit of simplifying. There's the habit of solitude, the habit of sorrow, and the habit of slowing. And this week, as we talk about the habit of simplifying, we want to answer this question: when less is better. So often, we are driven by the idea that we need more. We need more money. We are thinking about retirement, and we are thinking, well, will I have enough? We're thinking about the things that we want to do, or the vacations that we want to have, or the universities we want to send our kids to. We think about things down the line, and we are often driven by the question, do we have enough? But a very significant component to living a life with happiness and purpose is understanding when less is better. And there are lots of times in our lives that less is better. And I know there are lots of people dealing with the question of, so what really matters now? Right? When you are in that moment, when you are looking at your life and you're looking towards the end of your life, what really matters? Because your GIC can't help you breathe when you're in the emergency room and can't breathe. Your bonds, your diplomas, everything else that you consider to be really, really, really important will not help your heart beat another beat if you're in a car accident. What are the things that really matter? There's a story, just to give you to kind of play with that theme. In Acts 27, there's a story of Paul when he is going to Rome, and he is a prisoner, and he's going to Rome, and he ends up in this ship that is out at sea. It gets lost and blown in the wind for, I think it's 13 days or something, that they are adrift in torrential storm conditions. And when they are getting close to the end of that, Paul stands up, which is interesting. There's like 276 people on the ship, I believe. And Paul stands up and he says, God's told me that we're all going to be okay. Let's eat what we have. So they were all encouraged, and they ate some food themselves. They followed Paul's example, and when they had eaten as much as they wanted, they lightened the ship by throwing the grain into the sea. Now, think about that, right? The fact that the only thing they had to eat is the thing that they threw out. They weren't thinking about what they were going to have for lunch. Because when you're in those moments, less is better. Why did they lighten the ship? Because less is better. You know, one of the times that I am fully convinced that less is better is when I have to go help a friend move. Less is better. Less is better if you are portaging on a camping trip. Less is better when you're sailing in the open ocean. Less is better so much of our lives. Less is better. And you know, so full disclosure, Jen and I have been married for 32 years, and for 31 of those years we've lived in the same place. And you could come to my house after this, and everything I've said to you, you could say, in your face, Kevin. Right? Like, that's the fact, is that we collect stuff along our journey, and there is so much of that stuff that is actually just work to deal with. In fact, on Friday night, before I had even dug into this topic, and started to look into it, I've been wanting to clean up the drawers and my closet, because I've got, there's clothes there that I will never wear, but I don't know what it is. There's sentimental attachment to it. I looked cool in it one time. I don't know. All right? And we ended up partly throwing out. Some of it's just rags, and there's a garbage bag of clothes that I have just been dragging along. They're just taking up space. How does that happen? It happens simply because I just keep thinking I need more. I need more, I need better, I need newer. Less is better. The habit of simplifying is saying I have enough. As I look around this room, I know there are people in our community that don't have enough. When I look around this room, I'm pretty sure, at least by far, most of us have more than enough. How many times this week did you get up in the morning and say, yeah, I got enough? Right? How many times did you go, yeah, I'm good. I got everything I need. It's this world that we live in, where we are driven, so much of our time, so much of our energy is put into feeding this lie that we need more. And then so much of our energy is put into maintaining and caring for the more that we think we need. Think about the amount of insurance that you pay. The habit of simplifying actually comes to us in two parts. If we are Christ followers, it comes to us in two pieces. One is, God, give me less of what doesn't matter. And the other piece is, God, give me more of what does matter. Because this is the cognitive dissonance that we exist in. Is that we believe that this stuff really matters. even though Jesus tells us it doesn't. And we have these multiple voices going on in our head, and we live in a society where maybe we judge ourselves, maybe we judge everybody else by what they have, but that doesn't align with God's calling on our life to recognize that the thing that really matters that we have is Jesus. So, let's focus on the first part of this. God, give me less of what doesn't matter. Jesus, on his journey, he has this sermon called the Sermon on the Mount. And it's this incredible message. It starts in Matthew 5, and it carries through, and it covers all kinds of different ideas. And Jesus talks to this crowd of people about life. And he gives them life tips. He tells them what really matters in life. And in that, he has this, John 6, verse 19. Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. Do you know who doesn't lose any sleep over the volatility of the stock market? People who don't have stocks. You know who loses no sleep about whether their valuables are being stolen? People who don't have those valuables to steal. How much time and energy do we put into the things that are just going to rust and disappear? And Jesus says, don't make that your focus. Stop burning so much energy on the temporal. Carries on, verse 21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Where is your heart? Where was your heart this week? What were the things that kept you up at night? And Jesus says, he doesn't say this, but he says this, but the question is, do the things that you have keep you from the life that you want? For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Remember this from last week? If you want to change your life, change your habits. If you want to change your habits, let God change your heart. So when we look at that, where your treasure is, your heart will be also. Are you letting God transfer the focus of your heart to things that matter? Or are you controlling the direction of your heart, focusing on things that don't? Hebrews 12, I love this passage. Hebrews 12 says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. What is that? The sin that so easily entangles. This is a little bit of a side note, but I just find it really interesting. The sin that so easily entangles. When I looked into this and I looked at what the smart people thought it meant, I found that they generally focused on the idea that it's an issue of belief, and that whoever wrote Hebrews earlier had addressed that in chapter 10, which says, the sin that so easily entangles, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with the full assurance that faith brings. And carries on. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for or for he who promised is faithful. The sin that so easily entangles us is the disbelief that God is enough, or the disbelief that Jesus cares for us and will meet our needs. It entangles us, and it is something that I deal with. My struggles, as I speak to you as honestly as I can, is that it is really hard for me to go, I wonder how I'm going to do in retirement, and shifting that from, well, I better make sure that I'm really fully prepared for that, and I need to have a better job, and I need to make sure I'm saving enough. I tend to go that way instead of going, God, what do I need to do with my money so I can serve you, so you can care for me? Right? And that's the tension that I live in. I want to believe in God. I just don't fully trust him. And that is the sin that entangles. And he goes on, and this is interesting. He says, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. Whoever wrote Hebrews said, don't stop gathering with fellow Christians. Now, hear me on this, and I can write it down and sign it for you if you want. I am not saying that you need to come to the Bridge Community Church, and I am not saying that you even need to go to an organized church. My question is this: are you regularly gathering with people where you sit and you talk about Jesus? Where that is the discussion, right? Not just hanging out with good people, but actually hanging out with people who encourage you in your relationship with Jesus. Because sometimes what happens, and whoever wrote this said, as some are in the habit of doing, the fact is that we remove ourselves from that Christian conversation, and it is a sin that entangles us in the worries of the world. If we aren't talking about Jesus, honestly, we aren't thinking about Jesus. And if we remove ourselves from that conversation, then the other side of the argument that says more is better gets louder and louder, and it entangles us in a whole lot of things that don't matter. Back to this one. Hebrews 12. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Throw off everything that hinders. Tell me this, what hinders you? What hinders you in your relationship with Jesus? What stops you from being fully alive and fully at peace with the promises that Jesus gives us? What keeps you up at night other than how can I serve Jesus better? Or how awesome it is that I don't need to worry about how to serve Jesus better because Jesus has it figured out. What hinders you? The author of Hebrews says, because what we do matters, get rid of the things that hinder. What hinders you? And it can be anything. I don't even want to start giving a list, because your list may be really different from my list. And in fact, the thing that hinders you might be the thing that helps me, and vice versa. I'm not telling you a list of things to throw away. I am telling you to ask the question, what hinders me? from being fully alive in my relationship with Jesus. As I said before, the habit of simplifying, it's two-sided. God, give me less of what doesn't matter. God, give me less of what hinders me. And God, give me more of what does matter. So I've asked you one question to focus on, and now I'm going to draw you away from that and lead you into another question that goes like this. What matters most? In this life, and maybe you've seen, I love movies, those movies where somebody is told that they have an hour to live. What do they want to do? Who do they want to call? You know, if we were to put ourselves in that situation, or you had a day, what really matters? I can tell you the things that don't matter. The size of your bank account, your lifelong accomplishments. Can you imagine? In that last day, you say, I would absolutely love to have a conversation with my investment advisor. Right? And yet, there's a good chance that finances are something that consume your mind during the week. But what matters? What matters most? Here's an interesting thing. Is the most meaningful things in life are not things. I can guarantee you, in fact, if I knew my time was short, whatever that period of time would be, I can guarantee you I would not say, boy, I want to go through those bins in my basement. Right? Like, that stuff doesn't matter. And the things that we have in our life so often just don't matter. How much energy do we put into the stuff that we have? Whether it's maintenance or working to pay for the insurance. The most meaningful things in life are not things at all. When I brought this up before, I said the habit of simplifying is being able to say that I have enough, but that's actually just a partial statement. To fill that statement in, we need to add this. Because I have Jesus, I have enough. For a habit of simplifying, I need to be able to say, because I have Jesus, I have enough. And can you truly say it? Now, if you've been listening to me, you might be saying, I need to go home and get rid of all my stuff. I'm really not telling you that. I'm telling you to listen to what God says to you, but having stuff is not the enemy. It's our attitudes towards that stuff that is. And sometimes we just got to give it away, right? Paul talks about this in Philippians chapter 4. He says, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. Paul doesn't say, I've known what it is to be in need, and that's when I was like a good Christian, and I've known what it is to have plenty, and that's when I was a bad Christian. He doesn't say that, right? He says that if you are in need or if you have plenty, he's found the secret to being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. And you go, okay, what is it? What is the secret to being content? What is the secret to not being consumed by my stuff? Jen has this line. I don't think it's hers originally, but she claims a lot of stuff originally, and it's is that when you own stuff, your stuff owns you. All right? Is that your original, Jen? No, I don't think so either. When you own stuff, your stuff owns you. And so the secret to being content, the secret to having stuff but not having my stuff own me. In any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want, Paul, what is it? It is this: I can do all things through him who gives me strength. That's the secret to being content regardless of your circumstances. What is it to be content? So I have to ask this question, and I ask this question legitimately. What is life like if we allow Jesus to be our strength and not confidence in my bank account or confidence in my security system or confidence in my vehicle or confidence in my stuff? What is life like if we allow Jesus to be our strength? Imagine what it is if we were truly to be engaged in our relationship with Jesus the way Jesus desires our relationship with him to be, where we see him as our closest friend, where we see him as our counselor, where we see him as the one who understands everything about us. What if I were actually confident in the words of Jesus and didn't think that, my security relies on me, my success relies on me, which means my failures rely on me? What is life like if we allow Jesus to truly be our strength? Can you honestly say, and maybe I'm asking myself this, can I honestly say that if I were to wake up tomorrow and all my money was gone and all my possessions were gone, could I honestly say it's okay because I have Jesus? Because if I take myself to my last breath and I look at what matters then, the only thing that truly matters is that I have Jesus. In that last breath, the only thing that matters, the only thing that you take from this life is your relationship with Jesus. And you wouldn't, I hate to be morbid and everything, but if you had 1 minute to live, nothing else matters other than Jesus. And the cool thing about your relationship with Jesus is that as we walk with Jesus, and if we allow Jesus to lead us through this life, then he will lead us into the things that matter while we breathe, which is primarily our relationships. And he will lead us so that we don't become so angry and proud when people offend us, because we have Jesus. And even if you track that all through the rest of your life, you will be a better employee and a better friend and a better father and a better mother and a better sister and brother, because you have Jesus. Not because of the car you drive or the money in your bank account. What is life like if we allow Jesus to be our strength? Let's go back to Philippians 4 just for a minute. I'm gonna wrap up here really soon. Philippians 4 says, I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. The secret to contentment is learned. You know what that means? It means that you don't just go, okay, I'm going to be content leaving here. I've got it straightened out. I'm going to fully rely on Jesus, and it is done. Watch me go. All right? It means that it is learned. And it isn't learned theoretically. It's learned through experience. And the only way you can learn full contentment is to experience God in your situations. I don't like that it's learned. I rather it was just a decision, all right? But if we ask ourselves, am I willing to let Jesus change my heart? Am I really willing to? Or am I scared to death to let Jesus be my strength? Am I scared to give up control and actually sleep through the night because I don't worry about my stuff? Am I scared to give Jesus control? When we go back to these habits of simplifying, we need to say, God, give me less of what doesn't matter. Oh, man. Give me less of what doesn't matter. Are you willing to pray that? Am I willing to pray that? God, give me less of what doesn't matter. And give me more of what does matter. Because I have Jesus, I have enough. Can you just stand with me as we close in prayer? And in this moment, I'm asking you to get into your heads. I'm asking you, kind of not to just shake this off one way or the other. Hear me. I'm not telling you to go and give away your stuff. I'm just telling you to listen to what God says you should do with your stuff. And let God be the strength behind your decisions with your stuff. Because more is not better. So, Father, here we are. Hear our hearts, change our hearts, and teach us what it is to be content. In Jesus' name, amen.